Welcome to Hannity. Breaking tonight, we have a lot of news to cover. Biden's basement bunker campaign. Tonight, it is officially in panic mode. Polls are rapidly changing before our eyes. The media mob is now more nervous than ever. Former First Lady Michelle Obama stoking division, and she makes claims of racism from when she was First Lady. The far-left smear campaign in full gear tonight. We're just 64 days away from you being the ultimate jury, and that is Election Day, November 3rd. And the season of lying and smears is well underway. Per usual, Democrats, their complicit partners in the mob and the media, they speak with one voice. First, remember, they told their followers to take to the streets and resist. Remember, in one voice, they called for, well, let's see, harassment and never condemn the violence. Yeah, it was a little scary. Next, when American cities start burning before our very eyes, they ignore it. As Gerald Nadler said, it's a myth. And then the mob, they echo that lie and pretend, oh, it's not happening what your own eyes are showing you. They covered it up, in other words. And now, in one voice, well, okay, we can't deny it any longer, so let's go to the same old, same old. Let's blame President Trump for the weeks and weeks and weeks, almost 100 days of destruction carried out by left-wing anarchists. And tonight, we're going to peel back the layers of this political deception. We have a special Hannity investigation into what is the most radical, extreme agenda and platform from any major political party in modern American history, and, of course, their duplicitous partners, the media mob. We begin tonight with Joe Biden. 2016, when he was slightly less weak and frail, Joe told a crowd of supporters he'd like to take Donald Trump behind the gym and beat him up. Following weeks and months and years, a chorus of Democrats and mob members of the media, well, they vilified the president every second, minute, hour of every day. They glorified even violence and harassment against people who support the president. Hillary's terrible running mate, Tim Kaine, calling for his supporters to fight in the streets. Obama's Attorney General Loretta Lynch praising anti-Trump rioters who marched and bled and died. Senator Cory Booker telling activists to get up in the face of their political enemies. So, too, did Congresswoman Maxine Waters tell them they're not welcome anywhere in this country. Squad member Congresswoman Presley calling for unrest in the streets. Kamala Harris saying riots aren't going to stop and shouldn't stop. And just a few days ago, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi calling Republicans enemy of the state. And the Washington Post resident fraud Jennifer Rubin telling Conspiracy TV MSDNC that the Republican Party should be burned to the ground. Quote, we should level them. This kind of rhetoric is nothing new. Remember, Obama himself encouraged his supporters to get in the faces of their neighbors, and that he would, by the way, send a guy named Mr. Burgess to tear me up, Sean Hannity. Anyway, sadly, it is just a small part of the never-ending, nonstop psychotic hysteria among Democrats and, of course, their allies in the media mob. Take a look.
You see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they're not welcome.
They asked me, would I like to debate this gentleman? And I said, no. I said, if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
When they go low, we kick them.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
He shouldn't let up. Over and over again, the president and his supporters have been slandered, smeared, libeled, besmirched, dehumanized, compared to Nazis and fascists, called pretty much every name in the book. So now, is it really a coincidence that the far-left radical base of the Democratic Party, well, they're rioting in nearly every major city run by liberal Democrats for decades? Not only did high-profile Democrats and so-called journalists encourage this kind of violence daily, but they also enabled destructive riots to spiral out of control. In city after city, they ignored or mitigated the violent protest and minimized it. Liberal mayors and governors blocked the police from dispersing crowds of agitators. They bowed to the angry mobs. They slashed slash police budgets by billions of dollars around the country. Joe Biden applauding this, saying that he would absolutely redirect police funding because police had become the enemy. His radical running mate, Kamala Harris, praising Los Angeles for slashing its police budget by $150 million. The Minneapolis City Council, they voted to disband the police department altogether. And meanwhile, police are literally under fire and attack daily in this country. So far this year, 30 police officers have been shot and killed in the line of duty. Thousands more have been seriously wounded, assaulted, stabbed with knives, hit with bricks and rocks and frozen water bottles, canes and bats and hockey sticks and Molotov cocktails. Members of Biden's campaign donated to a fund dedicated to bailing these violent offenders out of jail, which, by the way, if he becomes president, there will be no bail, just like they have no bail in New York. In Oregon, far-left Governor Kate Brown banned police from actually using tear gas. Same thing in Seattle. We saw the Seattle mayor make that dumb decision. And Portland's incredibly dumb mayor, Ted Wheeler, prevented police from dispersing rioters and arresting arsonists. Under his watch, a federal courthouse was attacked, lit on fire for weeks on end, until the president was sent troops in to protect those federal buildings. Over the weekend in Portland, one apparent Trump supporter was shot by a self-proclaimed member of Antifa. That city has experienced nearly 100 straight nights of violent riots. Meanwhile, for weeks in Seattle, a prominent neighborhood was held hostage by a group of far-left rioters. City officials forced the police to totally abandon their local precinct. Their genius mayor, Jenny Durkan, she was telling us it's a summer of love zone. That was until two young African-American teens were murdered in the so-called autonomous Chop and Chaz zone. And, of course, the media mob, they tried their best to cover up all of this massive wave of violence. They compared Seattle's Chop Chaz zone to a street festival while they're being corrected on live TV. When Minneapolis was burning, MSDNC said that it was a mostly peaceful protest. And look at your screen. You got to look at this. You can't make this up. Fake news CNN referring to the carnage in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Look at what the bottom third says. Fiery, but mostly peaceful. Take a good look at that picture. Fake news CNN wonders why people chant CNN sucks. Now, of course, they weren't the only ones running cover for an angry far-left mob. Take a look for yourself.
Respectfully, shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
There's violence across the whole country. Do you disavow the violence from Antifa? That's happening in Portland right now? There's riots.
That's a myth that's being spread only in Washington, D.C.
About Antifa in Portland?
Yes.
It's a myth. What you see, don't believe what your eyes tell you. Democrats have this nasty habit, ignoring violence when it hurts them politically. For example, in Obama's hometown of Chicago, neither Barack or Joe lifted a finger in 8 long years to fix the weekly out-of-control violent crime there. That's Obama's home city. Meanwhile, for years on this program, we tried hard to shine a light on that very serious crisis. We scrolled the names of shooting victims on the screen. We pleaded with both Joe and Barack and their administration to get to work. Let's go take a trip down memory lane, shall we? 3,470. We don't hear a peep out of Obama. He's spoken out in 8 years, 9 times. But if it's a high-profile case, he's front and center. If it advances a narrative, he'll rush to judgment. No facts, no due process, no assumption of innocence. I know I've aged, but the point stays the same. 50 years in the Washington swamp. Ask yourself, what has Joe Biden ever done to improve America's cities? What does he ever do? Why did he fail the people of Chicago, the thousands shot and the thousands dead? Why didn't he fix Baltimore after what happened, the uprising in the Freddie Gray case? What did he do in Ferguson, Missouri, after what happened with Michael Brown and Officer Darren Wilson, who, by the way, the DOJ of Obama said was a justified shooting in the end? So what did Joe do to make America a better, a safer place for all Americans and restore law and order? What police reform? What criminal justice reform? That's right, Donald Trump did all those things. The answer for Joe is he did absolutely nothing except sow division by constantly, like Obama, rushing to judgment. And now Biden, Democrats, the mob, and the media, they're being forced to finally address the violence in America's cities. They can no longer deny reality after 100 nights, right? But not because of the carnage or the assaults or the threats or the arson or the murders. No, they don't seem to care about any of that. Instead, for them, it's all about the polls and it's all about an election. Listen to Don Lemon of Fake News CNN.
Guess what? The rioting has to stop. Chris, as you know and I know, it's showing up in the polling. It's showing up in focus groups. It is the only thing right now that is sticking.
It's sticking. Oh, we better deal with this. We've been denying it, but we'll deal with it now. For political purposes only? Oh, so they'll deal with it for 64 days and then go back to ignoring it? And after months of covering up the chaos in America's cities, they're now suddenly at least acknowledging that this kind of violence is not good. But here's the catch. The media, the Democrats, are now yet again speaking with one voice. Oh, well, if we have to admit it, let's just blame Donald Trump. Joe Biden accusing the president of fanning the flames of violence. Vanity Fair saying the exact same thing, of course. For the past several days, this same language was echoed over and over and over again. They are one mind. They are the propaganda media wing for the Democratic Radical Socialist Party. Take a look.
Are you comfortable with the president appearing to inflame tensions instead of what we normally see from presidents, which is trying to calm them down?
The president is willfully fanning the flames of this violence.
Biden is the one who has repeatedly condemned the violence and called for peaceful demonstrations. Donald Trump has not done that. It's the Trump supporters who are out here causing mayhem.
Fires are burning, and we have a president who fans the flames rather than fighting the flames.
The president does not have a plan. He has fanned the flames and incited violence in this country.
Use the exact same words. Keep in mind, it was President Trump who offered federal assistance to every one of these cities and states over and over and over and over again to restore law and order and safety and security and control and stop the violence. Yet, no, they'd rather take their cheap political shots at Donald Trump, and the president has been turned down by America's dumb liberal mayors and governors over and over again. And apparently they, I guess, would just rather watch their cities burn and innocent people get hurt and use it politically to blame Donald Trump for them not doing their job. Actually doing something about the crisis, this is their number one actual responsibility. Now, later after this show, Laura Ingraham, well, she interviewed the president about this very topic. Here's a preview of what he has to say. Take a look.
Biden said again today in Pittsburgh that essentially you're not going to be safe in Donald Trump's America.
So if it weren't Donald Trump's America, to just use the expression as I'm president, you would have riots like you've never seen. The Democrats have lost control of the radical left. Don't forget, Biden wasn't going to come out of his basement until the election. Now he had to because the polls are so good. For me, now he had to because the polls are different. So.
President is exactly right. Sadly, Joe Biden is just lying to you. An election year conversion. Radical Democrats, they're lying to you. The mob, as usual, they're lying to you. And as we all well know, these are the same groups of people that have been lying in unison for years. You know, the ones that lied to the entire country about non-existent Trump-Russia collusion, while, of course, ignoring the clear collusion, and that is Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for Russian disinformation dossier. They lied about the Trump-Ukraine quid pro quo, but they have Joe Biden on tape. You're not getting $1 billion until you fire the prosecutor investigating my zero-experience son Hunter being paid millions. Oh, he did all of that. Now, different topic, same tactic. They've been stoking the flames of violence among their radical members, fearful to correct them and stop them and speak out against them. As per usual, let's blame Donald Trump for that, too. If the dog bites, bee stings, if you're feeling sad, of course it's Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump cured cancer. How many times have I said they would want to impeach him for that, too? So make no mistake. What we are all seeing in Seattle, Portland, Kenosha, Wisconsin, New York City, all over the country, this is what I call a preview of coming attractions if Joe Biden is elected president in 64 days. The choice is yours. You're the ultimate jury. Will America cave to the radicalism, or will you vote to protect the safety and security of your town and your city, and while at the same time protecting your liberties and freedom and capitalism and risk and reward and invention and innovation?